Oh, Kemi, thank you so much for joining us on, I know, what's an extraordinarily busy day for you with everything that's happening around government at the moment. We've just listened to that film, and we can see that things are not easy for the next generation coming up and through. And we wanted to talk with you through the streams of the ARC conference, some of the things that you would love to do about the challenges that they are facing and some of the solutions that you see. So if we start with our cultural stories, this morning we heard that fewer and fewer younger people are even wanting to defend our nation. What is it, do you think, that they find that's gone wrong for them? What is it, do you think, that they are struggling with?
Well, I think we should put ourselves in the shoes of the average young person. They're told that they have to go to university. And then when they go to university, they're taught all sorts of weird things about what a horrible country they live in and what a terrible history it has. They come out of university with all of this debt, far more than what I had to pay when I took out student loans and tuition fees. I finished a 4-year degree with £14,000. Young people today have loans of £40,000, £50,000, £60,000.
My children will tell you about that.
And then they're told that the planet is going to burn and they've got no future. They can't get a job. Those who can get jobs find the jobs don't pay very well. And even the ones who do get the jobs that pay well can't get a house, can't start a family. Of course they're going to be upset. And I think that we who are older, and I feel sad that I'm now in this category, being now at age 46, I cannot call myself a young person anymore.
You're still very young.
Thank you.
Still very young.
But I think we take for granted just how much hope and opportunity there was. When I was 26, so 20 years ago, I wasn't worried about job security. When I finished university in 2003, it was, do I get a job in engineering or do I go into banking? These offers, what's the best one? Do I move out of London or move? That's what I was thinking about. That's not the option that young people have today. So we need to give them some hope. We need to connect with them emotionally, show that we are creating a future for them. But I'm particularly worried about the way they feel about their country. I think young people saying they wouldn't fight for their country is extremely worrying. This is one of the things that we just took for granted. We need to show them that this is a country that is worth fighting for. We need to be more united as we're fragmenting. We are worth fighting for.
I completely agree with you, Kemi. And I think if we look at it from the social fabric perspective, and the fact that now young people are experiencing less resilience than they have done historically, and also have less confidence to go on and start a family, and we're beginning to see declining demographics. What do you think is behind that, and what do you think government can actually do? Because government on social policy can be quite a blunt instrument. And what is cultural and what is government, and can government impact culture?
So I'm glad that you used the word culture. I don't think we talk about culture enough. I've actually tried to change the lexicon so that we don't just talk about British values, which are often not uniquely British, but talk about our culture, which those values underpin, which is uniquely, it is uniquely ours. And I think that government can help with culture, but usually not in the way that government tries to, with all these random schemes and bits of pots of money everywhere. At the moment, government thinks that culture is just, art and music. And a lot of people, when they talk about culture, they think it's just, clothes or food and language. Culture is really norms, behaviors, expectations. It's how you treat other people. It's how you show respect, how you treat women or minorities, how you raise your children, who gets a job in the company. Is it a meritocracy or is it your cousin? That's what culture is. It's all of those behaviors, and we do have a unique culture that we need to defend. When it comes to demographics, I think that the culture is changing. It's not just happening to us in the UK. It's happening across the West and even many non-Western Western countries. I think that we need to champion family. We need to champion having children. I mean, you open the newspaper and there are all these horrible articles about how terrible it is having children, and it's much better to save your money and go on a cruise to the Caribbean instead. I mean, they're these hollow sort of mantras that are replacing things which I believe are really fundamental to human happiness. Having children, having a family, not being isolated, those things do help create resilience. I think people who started families much younger didn't really have time to worry so much about a lot that those of us who have more leisure time do worry about. So championing that culture, the culture of family, of protecting childhood in so many ways. We are letting children down these days. It's something I'm worried about. I think that's what we need to do, and that will encourage marriage. I doubt that changing tax schemes and those sorts of things make much of a difference. The evidence shows that they don't work anyway.
And when you think about our demographics, obviously we have some choices between a stagnating economy, higher levels of migration, or actually having our own children. How would you navigate that kind of triptych of challenges?
So my ambition is to create a high growth, low immigration economy. People in this country were very welcoming of immigration. I mean, I'm a testament to that. But the scale and the pace of immigration in recent years, dare I say even recent decades, has meant that the social fabric has been fraying. I believe that this country is our home. It's not a dormitory for people who want to come here and make some money. It's not a hotel. This is our home. And that really means that we need to re-engineer an economy that delivers that. I think immigration has been used as a shortcut, but it's a Ponzi scheme, because even when you get a new batch of immigrants who come in, the next generation doesn't exactly do what the last generation did. I also worry beyond that about things like artificial intelligence, quantum, robotics. All of these things are challenges, but if we invest in the right places and we make sure that Britain continues to lead where it counts, I think that we can deal with that. But it's also partly culture. It's very easy for governments to open borders rather than tackle very significant problems at home, like cutting welfare. We are spending £1 in every £3 on welfare, 1 in every 7 in defence. During the Cold War, it was the other way around. We are now spending more on welfare than we get in income tax. The rider is heavier than the horse. We need to bring our welfare bill down. It is the real reason why we had a defence secretary resign 2 weeks ago, because he wasn't getting the money that he needed to defend our country. It is extraordinary that a defense secretary would say that the prime minister is not keeping us safe and he's not allowed to do the job. So it is urgent. It is an emergency. It's the first thing Andy Burnham needs to deal with, when he can stop taking selfies and focus on the job at hand. But yes, that's what we need to do.
So we have 1,000 young leaders at this conference. And if my own team of young people is anything to go by, they often berate me over how difficult it is to purchase a house. They feel like that social contract has been broken. The work hard, get a job, progress, and then you can buy a house and have a family. They feel like some of these things have been lost. What would you do as leader in order to re-establish that social contract that gives our young people an opportunity?
So I want to promote the conservative, dare I say, the right-wing version of fairness, which is that it is your effort that determines reward, rather than the left-wing version of just redistribution so that everyone can have the same thing, which just means all of us are poorer. For young people, that does mean dealing with the housing crisis. There are 3 reasons why housing is a problem. The first, supply. We don't build enough. The second is demand. We have too many people who have come into the country who have needed houses. We haven't built enough for them. And the third is that the rest of the economy is not performing that well. And that meant that housing became an asset. There was an asset bubble created around housing. Instead of money being put into risk-taking, into companies, into equities, it all went into housing. And that means that the average salary that you need now to buy a home is well above the general average salary. Yeah. We have to fix that. But I would say to young people that I'm sorry that it has come to this. I'm working to fix it. I'm working to bring back hope. I think we took for granted that our country was just a wealthy country. Britain is a rich country, and so we can just do whatever we like. We can send loads of money abroad, we can deindustrialize and bankrupt ourselves with net zero, we can have everyone who claims to be an asylum seeker coming here, people converting to Christianity, get asylum, and then they start going back to the mosque, or people saying that they're gay, and then they get here, they get married and have children. We have allowed our kindness to be exploited, and those of us who are around now have to make sure that we fix it for the next generation, rather than just enjoy ourselves and hope that they figure it out. We have to do this for them. So I say to young people, the hope is coming. I have lots of policies which should deliver for you. There is more to come. The work is not done yet. But we need to make sure that we bring common sense back and start uniting our country and make sure that we deliver an inheritance for the next generation.
And You touched on net zero there, Kemi. You have pretty much led the way on turning away from net zero. And the victory in Aberdeen that you've just experienced, congratulations.
Thank you.
Was really...
Thank you, Conservative. You can tell who they are. But
was really off the back of a recommitment to North Sea oil once again. What would you do in government to lower our energy prices and to actually get this country's energy system moving again?
Okay. So it wasn't just the commitment, it was also the consistency. I've been saying this for a long time, and the conviction. When the day that net zero was legislated for, I was one of only 2 MPs who spoke out against it. The other was a Labour MP, Graham Stringer. I could see where it was going when everyone else was just excited and yet again more policy making without a plan. And it was that consistency, people knowing that I really meant it, that I think helped in Aberdeen South. There is a lot that we can do. We do need to repeal the Net Zero by 2050 legislation. The Climate Change Act sounds really lovely. It does not do anything at all about climate change. It was brought in 2008 with Ed Miliband. What it is doing is deindustrializing. We lost 1/3 of our refining capacity in just the last year. We are losing heavy industry. You look at ceramics, aluminium, anything that relies on energy is going away. The Climate Change Act is the act that has a lot of the things, the carbon tax and so on, that are creating those problems. It would abolish the Climate Change Committee. But how does that make life easier for everyone else? We would be able to drill our own oil and gas in the North Sea. There's 25 billion pounds of revenue that's there. Let's get that out. Let's use it. You can, if you want, you can use it to subsidize bills. There are loads of green taxes on our energy bills that people don't see, all sorts of levies and so on. We could take those off. We currently have a policy to scrap VAT on energy bills for 3 years, and we would do that by taking the money from the renewable obligation certificates. For those people who know what that is, it's more Ed Miliband subsidies. But basically, there is a villain in the story of Britain's deindustrialization. His name is Ed Miliband. Please remember that name. He is the villain of the story. He has made our country poorer. He started in 2008, came back 2024 to finish the job. We need to make sure that Andy Burnham understands that this man should not be let anywhere near the levers of power, not in the energy department, not in the treasury. If he can be minister for paperclips, let's do that. But he is making us poorer, and we need to stop him.
And Kemi, if you had one last thing to say to this conference, we are committing to the relaying of the very foundations of our civilization. No small task. It probably feels as Herculean as some of the tasks that you've had to face as well. But what would be the one message that you would want to put out, particularly to our young leaders who are here, that actually raises their eyes and thinks, yes, I have a future?
Right. Well, obviously, as Conservative Party leader, I will want to use my final words to promote my party. But why does conservatism matter? Why does the Conservative Party matter? We are the vehicle for common sense. I believe in institutions. One of the things that has made this country great is that we have looked after our institutions. We've been able to hand something from one generation to the next. The Conservative Party is the only party that really cares about many of those institutions which otherwise would have withered away, whether it's the church or the army or even the monarchy. Institutions need people to believe in them to survive. If young people don't want to join the army, if people don't go to church, and I say this, I define myself as a cultural Christian. If you do, the granddaughter of a reverend, he would be so upset about how few times I actually go to church. If you don't look after these things, they will go away. We care about that. We have been around for 200 years. We are an institution as well. We have a purpose, and that purpose is the vehicle for conservatism, keeping what is great about our country, changing what does need changing, but not at a pace that the country becomes unrecognizable. It is about having common sense, and that's what we are pushing now. That is what the party has changed to under my leadership. I know that previously people saw all sorts of weird and wonderful things that the Conservative Party was doing. We're not doing those things you didn't like anymore. We're going to do the things that you do like, and I hope that whenever an election is called, whether it's next week or next year or the year after, that we will get a second look. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.